the second of our Agile and Lean talks. We're going to have a look at one particular and quite popular development methodology, Scrum. Scrum's more of an Agile technique than you sort of classified as a Lean technique, but it's one of the more popular techniques that is used. So we'll have a look at it. We'll sort of give you a high-level overview of how it deals with aspects of iterative development. So one of the key defining characteristics of an Agile approach is it is iterative in regular intervals, maybe every 1 to 4 weeks, whatever. You're going back to your client and you're saying, here, have some running, working software that they can look at, evaluate, and give you feedback on. So Scrum is one particular way of having a system or an approach that tries to accomplish that. And in the next talk after this, we're going to have a look at a few of the principles, and some of these will be underpinning Scrum principles that we will want to try to explore as part of this module. So start off first of all with a very high level overview of Scrum, and you can see it here. So it's a popular Agile software development methodology, we know that. And again, as it's Agile, we're using an iterative approach. We will be producing working software in regular intervals and giving that to the user. So kind of some of the other things you can see here. Over the next few slides, we'll break them down in more detail. You can see here we have a product backlog. And the backlog effectively is going to be a long list, can be as long as it needs to be, of all of the things that we might want to do within this project. So it's all of the items of functionality, essential, desirable, optional, doesn't matter what it is. A sprint backlog is then the things that we're going to try to accomplish within a sprint. Now, these iterations are called sprints within Scrum. So they're generally 1 to 4 weeks in length. And the sprint backlog is what it is we want to try to do to accomplish, or in fact what we will accomplish within that sprint. And that gives you at the end of the sprint a deliverable, and we'll then keep repeating that process. Scrum, I guess it's named from rugby. You can sort of read the comment at the bottom. So it's about restarting a process following a minor infraction. So this diagram here, bit more detailed, and it sort of teases out the main components or aspects within the Scrum approach. Going over on the left hand side, first of all we have what's known as the product owner. Next to that we have the team, and we have the Scrum Master. So they are the 3 key types of individual that's involved in it. In the next slide we'll talk a little bit more about them. Product owner, he or she's our main interface with all of the stakeholders, the clients, the people who's paying for it, the people who have an interest in it. So the product owner liaises with them, understands their needs, understands their views, and is able to communicate that. And their main area is the product backlog. They get to decide all of the things that we might want to implement, and has a key role or a key function in terms of saying which is the most important thing to do next. The team then is our team of developers and testers and all of the other types of skills that we need for creating this working software. And we're going to have a sprint planning meeting, we'll talk about that as well, but this is where we will, at the start of each sprint, decide the things that we want to implement within it. So we're taking things from the backlog, we're deciding, okay, there's a big long list of things we could potentially do for this next sprint, 1 to 4 weeks, so quite often 2 is a common duration. What are we going to try to accomplish within, for example, those 2 weeks? That gives us our sprint backlog. You can see then we've got 1 to 4 week sprint, generally 2's common 1, and we've got a Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master, they facilitate the process. They're there to try to make things work smoothly, and that's their main role, is to keep things going, to, if there's any issues or difficulties, try to resolve those issues or difficulties. Every 24 hours, we've got a daily Scrum meeting. And this is really quite a stand-up meeting done in the morning, where each member of the team will stand up and say a little bit about well, what are they going to do today by way of introducing new functionality, and if there's anything that's sort of blocking them or could prevent them from doing that. Top, you can see we've got burn down and burn up charts. These are just simply a way of tracking our progress during the sprint, so that if there's 4 or 5 items of functionality, then we can track, are we on target to complete those items of functionality within, for example, the 2 weeks we have available. Over on the right hand side then, we've got some finished work. So after every sprint, we will produce something that is complete, that can be given to the client. And there's often a review and a retrospective. So you think about, well, how did it go? What worked well? What maybe didn't work well? What are the lessons that could be learned that in the next sprint we can improve upon to try to do things better? So it's a reflective process, and that's quite an important aspect by way of enabling it to adapt, to change, to improve. So the Scrum team, the 3 main people that we have within it. So the first one's our product owner. Product owner has the vision of what needs to be developed and conveys this to the Scrum team. Now, to maintain that vision, they may need to talk to a range of other stakeholders, that's fine, but they are the key contact, the key interface between the development team and whomever it is interested in getting something developed. So they have the vision of what should be developed. The team then itself, the development team delivers the vision in PSIs, potentially shippable increments. So what this means is that if I have a 2-week sprint and I'm going to try to tick off an item of functionality, I'm going to implement something, I will do it in a way that is potentially shippable. It's not going to be half done. It's not going to be buggy and fall over. I'm going to make sure that if I'm doing it proper to the point where I am happy to go and give it to the client, to the customer, and to say, look, it is done, it is tested, it does what it wants to do, you can use it in earnest. It's not shoddy, it's properly managed. So this is a potentially shippable increment. It means you do the thing and you do it properly. Team comprises several individuals with cross-functional skills, analysis, development, testing, etc. There are different ways of separating and combining the skills within the team, but certainly as a collective, the team contains people who understand about design, who can develop, who can test, who understand about deployment. So the team is a broad mix of skills because all of those skills will be put into effect during each of the sprints. You will be designing, implementing, testing, deploying, delivering pieces of software. In some teams, every single member of the team may do a bit of that. In other teams, you may have some people that specialize more in some roles or the other. Scrum Master then. Now it is an important role, sounds rather a grand role. Scrum Master isn't a manager, so he or she is really there to smooth things along. It's up to the team to develop the software. That's their goal. And the Scrum Master is there just to help the team do this. So to keep them on track, if there's anything that's getting in the way, the Scrum Master will try to resolve these particular issues. And they're the ones that help provide the steer in terms of the overview, the Scrum approach, and make it as smooth an operation as possible. So in terms of a little bit more of the detail here, so we mentioned about the backlog that we have, and what we want and what we need to develop is stored within the product backlog. Now, here it says here, it's a prioritized list of requirements. The notion of prioritization is important so that we not only have a list of all of the things that we want to have in our software, but we have prioritized them in terms of, well, what is the most important? Now, importance here can be in terms of essentialness to it. It can be in terms of because it is a prerequisite for some other things. It can be in terms of it would be good to see this early because then decisions can turn on it. So when we're thinking about the importance of something, that can be a rich definition of importance. Nonetheless, though, the items we have in the backlog are prioritized, and that is quite important. That's something that the product owner is largely responsible for facilitating. Now, the things that are on can include everything from a business feature to a technical issue or a bug. So it's not only simply new pieces of functionality, it could be a revision to something, it could be something that hasn't really worked out the way it was meant to, or there's unforeseen issues with it, but it is something, a change, a piece of software, something that will deliver some runnable software at the end of it. If we're thinking about the information that's stored on the product backlog, in terms of Scrum, it's stored in terms of user stories, and user stories are commonly used across most of the Agile development techniques. So a user story, it's a concise way of capturing, at a fairly high level, it's not a detailed design, it's a fairly high level way of capturing something that needs to be done. And you can see down the sticky here, the common format. So as who, so you capture the who it is. Am I a user of the system? Am I an administrator of the system? Who am I? So as whoever I are, I want something. So the something is the piece of functionality. So that why. So I also capture the reason why I want something. And that's quite important, because if we're talking about items of functionality, they have reasons why they exist. And if we capture those reasons, it gives us more assurance that in terms of the what it is, we know how we're trying to design this to bring about that beneficial return. So it makes it more likely we'll get the right thing developed, because we know what it is and why we're trying to introduce this. Certainly in the backlog, we don't want to have vast swathes of documentation for all of these. We want to have each of the user stories fairly concisely detailed and stored on that backlog. So the next one then, when we're, again, a little bit of side here on our user stories diagram. It gives you a bit of breakdown of some of the desirable traits for how you would write it. In terms of use of clear, unambiguous language, should be traceable, should be verifiable. It shouldn't specify a solution. It should be in terms of, well, I would like this, a what for a why reason. And again, you can see another symbol. As a role, I want a goal or desire, so that benefit that arrives from it. They're useful, and they're good ways, certainly within your own team, to think about the functionality that you want to have within your, for example, your game development project, and to capture and to maintain your own backlog. Okay, so we've got our backlog, big long list of things. Each sprint, let's say we're going with a 2-week sprint, we're going to want to decide what it is we will do within that 2-week sprint. And we want it to be as much benefit as we possibly can. So this is where the sprint planning meeting comes in. And the goal of that meeting is to look at all of the user stories in the backlog and to decide which ones we will do in the next sprint. So there's different components to this. The product owner, now he or she, they'll take input from the team, because the team can say that, okay, here's an item of functionality that maybe the product owner is not that excited about, but it is a prerequisite that you need to do this to enable you to do some other things. And quite often the developers are going to be best placed to be able to identify those prerequisite, not exciting stuff, but prerequisite stuff that opens up and enables other ones. And again, the product owner will understand the views of the clients and the customers and what they would really like to see in that particular iteration. Long and short of it, though, is that we end up with a list of prioritized user stories. So we know this is the most important, this is the next most important, this is the next most important, and so on down through the list. Once we've done that, then it's going to be up to the development team to select which of the user stories are implemented. So they know they have, for example, 2 weeks, and they can take the most important user story and they can say, right, again, it's a discussion within the team, how long do we think this will take? And you might have a couple of team members going, well, I think we could do this within 2 to 3 days. And again, there's devil in detail here in terms of how you deal with variation across the team and so on. But in essence, the team will decide it will take X amount of time to implement this user story. And that is the design, the implementation, the testing. It's the full end-to-end bit of that component. Assuming it, say, takes 2 to 3 days, then they'll go on to the next most important element and they'll work out how long does that take. And repeat that process so that at the end of it, they will be able to say, okay, in the next 2-week sprint, here is a list of the user stories that we're confident that we can implement properly, test properly within for example, the next 2 weeks. Collectively, those things combined, they give us then the sprint backlog, and that is going to be the key goals that the team will focus on for that sprint. Just another way here of viewing it. So again, we've got our backlog, we've got our sprint backlog. Going into the sprint, generally 1 to 4 weeks in duration. Every 24 hours, we're having our scrum. So this is our stand-up meeting where each member of the team is saying, okay, well, today I'm going to be doing this, and here are some things which might stop me from doing this, blockers. So again, it's a way of, without dragging things on, enabling the whole team to understand where everybody's at and to understand if they have any particular role in terms of not holding people up. It's a general convention that when you start your sprint, the sprint backlog is fixed. That's what you're doing within the sprint duration. And if the sprint is 2 weeks, then it is 2 weeks. You're sticking to these things. So these are not sort of just, well, it'd be nice to do these. These are firm things that are committed to. And it's only in exceptional circumstances that you might change this. So 9 times out of 10, 19 times out of 20, whatever it is, you have a 2 week sprint, you implement the things you would say, and you do it within the period. And it's only if there is something truly exceptional that you would consider modifying or verifying that. This is an important aspect and is one of the reasons why Scrum works, and it ties into some of the Agile principles about empowerment and things like that. In a lot of project management techniques, that they're centrally controlled. You will have a project manager, and that project manager will be responsible for doing timelines and assigning tasks to people and saying you're going to be doing this and you've got to hit this deadline, and they have an oversight and they control the overall process. Scrum, other Agile approaches, they are much more devolved in terms of their management process. They say that, okay, we have decided what we can do, and it was the team that decided, the team that thought, okay, in a 2 week sprint, we believe we can implement this and implement this and implement that. So the team have almost decided what they think is feasible within that 2 week, for example, sprint. It is then up to the team to get on with it and to do it. They are the ones that are responsible for delivering on it. As part of the stand-up, they're responsible for understanding what other people are doing and the role that they have in terms of not blocking people. So it is a devolved management process. Very much the team members decide what they will do to enable them to hit and to deliver on the items of software that they're going to do. In a lot of traditional environments, this is scary for a lot of managers because it's almost like giving up control. You have to go and trust your employees. But if you've got good people, this actually empowers people. It gives them the freedom to perform highly. And with the right team, it is very much more successful than trying to manage it centrally. The Scrum Master helps here in terms of coordination. The daily Scrum meetings help in terms of sequencing. The burn down chart again helps. So the burn down chart is a way of either ticking off what it is you've done or burn up, measuring your process towards the end. So you have things like velocity. You can track if you are on target, and if you're not, you can sort of take action then to hopefully help correct whatever issues you're dealing with. So I mentioned that burn down chart tracks how much work remains or how much work you've done as a burn up chart. The stand-up meetings, again, are ways of helping the team remain together. So key takeaways on this, Scrum is one of the more popular Agile approaches. It's more Agile than Lean, but it's quite a good one to have a look at. It is a devolved form of project management, similar to basically all of the other Agile and Lean approaches. So it's the development team and the product owner. They are the key individuals that decide what gets to be done, how long things will take, and they have a shared responsibility to then deliver on these different targets. So that's all we want to cover in this particular one here. In the next talk, we're going to have a look at some of the Scrum principles that specifically apply to this project and some of the underpinning ideas, Agile and Lean ideas that we want to try to get exposure and practice of within this particular module. They're elementary ones, but again, these are the bases, the foundations on which you will build and ultimately introduce the more complex Agile and Lean approaches.